everyone, and welcome back to AmourologyEd, where we do sex and alternative lifestyle education. My name is Krista. I am your host. Just a reminder, if you're new to this, that I have been doing sex education for many years now, and I have identified as polyamorous for over 10 years now. And I come from those backgrounds, and I come from a queer LGBTQ background. I come from a demi-pansexual background, so sort of on the asexual spectrum background as well. And I come from a person with a disability background. So that's where I come from when I do my sex and alternative lifestyle education. I think it's a unique perspective that we don't sometimes hear from. Anyway, today we're going to be talking about vaginal stimulation. We're going to be talking about it in the context of masturbation as we're continuing on our trajectory since everybody is stuck at home. How are you doing with that, by the way? I'm surviving. I'm doing good. We're getting there. It's fine. It's going to be fine. Anyway, let's talk vaginas. So this episode, we're going to talk about internal vaginal stimulation, and we're going to talk about tips and tricks to use for that, studies that have been done on lots of different owners of vaginal canals, and what that means for maybe you and your pleasure, and are you normal? Spoiler, you probably are normal. We're going to talk a lot about anatomy and the different ways that one can stimulate the vaginal canal that may or may not work for you. So stay tuned. I'm really excited. So if you have watched our last videos, go back and watch the last videos. We've talked about clitoral stimulation. We've talked about masturbation basics. We've talked about penises, which you may get something out of if you don't have a penis. So maybe go back and watch that too. But there are concepts covered in those that I'm not going to cover in this that I think are useful for this as well. So, quick reminder, go back and watch some videos, get more information. Yeah. So, let's get going. Remember our cute little clitoris that we talked about? We talked about how to stimulate externally on the clitoris, this little spot here that is external, but there's so much more to the clitoris. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to stimulate the various different spots of the clitoris internally as well as other things. The biggest takeaway from this is that not everybody likes penetration, and that is okay. And for a lot of people, you need to really work that area and get it ready for the penetration. So when somebody is aroused to the point where they are ready for penetration, you will see all of the internal clitoral anatomy structure and the vaginal canal and everything will kind of swell and expand and become engorged and ready for some really good action. And so if you're watching the videos, I do have a really good kind of image here of a vulva that is not aroused and ready and a vulva that is engorged and potentially ready for penetration. Again, even if somebody is showing signs that they're ready for penetration, don't penetrate them without their consent because some people just don't like that. That's all right. It is really, really important, however, to wait till everything is ready to be penetrated in order to penetrate, because as we're going to talk about later, there's a lot of different aspects that kind of swell into that canal and become reachable from that for various different positions. And if you're not ready for that, you kind of lose out on a lot of that stimulation that could be really pleasurable. And in fact, it can be really uncomfortable if you don't have that. So please, 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 if you have a partner or you're with yourself, don't rush it. Wait for yourself to become ready, and that'll make it so much more of a pleasurable experience. Once you are ready, it can be really tempting to just rush into penetration and pretty far into penetration too, to just really get in there. But we're going to talk about a technique called shallowing, which is basically just paying attention to the first few inches inside the vaginal canal. So I'm going to refer back to OMG Yes, because I friggin' love them, and I kind of wish they would pay me to say this, but they're not. But they have done new studies on lots of different owners of vaginas. And this time, I think they refer to studying about 20,000 people. And what they show in their data is that 82% of vagina owners get extra pleasure from touch just inside the entrance to the vagina. Just inside. 82%. So pay attention there. Also, 40% of vagina owners say that shallowing makes a deeper penetration feel more pleasurable later on. And 25% say it helps to build a stronger, more intense orgasm. Really, these numbers don't lie. Focus a little bit on that inside of that, right inside that area. Krista, I want some techniques for shallowing. Okay, Krista, hold on. One technique used for shallowing is called curling. So you're gonna start above the opening and curl the toy or your finger or whatever you're using so the tip kind of drags against the bottom wall of the vagina on its way in. So you're just playing with the first few inches inside the canal, and then it kind of lightly curls up to touch the top of the wall. You can repeat this over and over and over. Or there's catching. So you can use your finger, toy, whatever you're using to put the tip of it against the opening and move down so that it catches the entrance as it goes in a tiny bit each time you kind of push it in. So you're going to catch the entrance while you're pushing it down and in. There can be a kind of little thud as you do this, as the tip kind of goes in and rubs against that wall. Fluttering. So whatever you're using is oftentimes thicker than the opening of that canal. And this works especially good if you're using a toy. So you can use that to kind of create a really nice little pressure just as it enters, just as it begins to penetrate. And you can kind of keep it right there and go back and forth and just flutter it right in that little spot over and over again to really get that nice little like teasing sensation. Tipping. This is exactly what it sounds like. You're going to take the tip of whatever object you are using, stick it right in there, just the tip, just for a second. No, just the tip. And you're going to hold it there actually. So it's going to go just inside and you're just going to hold it there and keep that anticipation going. And while this may seem it's all about the tease, the research has shown that little gentle thrusts right there, just little tiny, tiny gentle thrusts can be really, really great for a lot of people. Some people use shallowing to kind of get themselves ready for more deeper penetration. Some people use shallowing to be their main course and to just live there and see what happens. And some people can orgasm from just that. Some people like to go back and forth between two different modes. Find what feels right for you. A little further in, we have the vestibular bulbs. So on our clitoris, we have these kind of testicular sort of looking things that are kind of underneath, that are internal, that are just behind the lips of the vagina, just at the entrance. So spending some time there can be really, really great, and really using fingers or two or whatever you want to do to kind of round and do circles and really massage into those bulbs a little bit. You might find something new that you haven't felt before. The G-spot. I have a love-hate relationship with the G-spot because it's so widely known as this amazing pleasure button, and I just think that it's misunderstood. First of all, it's not really a spot. It is a cone of erectile tissue that surround the urethra. So when we get aroused, this cone and this, the urethral sponge kind of engorge and swell up a little bit, and you can sometimes feel that through the top of the vaginal canal. This can feel kind of like people describe it as kind of a walnut type feeling where it's kind of ridged. And it's kind of different spots for everybody. And not all people get that. Not all people even get a G-spot that they can feel. So just keep that in mind as we go a little bit further into the G area, as I'm going to call it. So let's find your G-spot, if you have one. Put in one or two fingers with your palm facing up and kind of curl your finger into a come hither motion. Come hither. And then you're going to make a hook with your fingers and feel right behind your pubic bone. If you have a spot that you can feel, and again, do this while you are turned on already, because you're not really going to be able to feel it without that. You're going to feel a small kind of walnut textured patch. So the G-spot is your urethral sponge that is being kind of pushed down by your clitoris and all these other wonderful sexual organs kind of swelling in anticipation for getting more pleasure. So when you stimulate the G-spot, it can be really pleasurable for people because it's a sensation that is kind of unlike anything else. And you're stimulating this urethral sponge and you're stimulating your clitoris in various different ways. So it can be really, really yummy for some people. Now, 20% of people with vaginas say that their G region seems to move and is not consistently in the same place. What? Bodies change? Oh my gosh, I can't even. Okay, yes, I can. Yes, 20% of people say that their G-spot moves or G area moves. Also, the depths vary from person to person. People are dynamic and different. So, 18% of people say it's about 1 knuckle in. 29% say it's about 2 knuckles in. 37% say it's as deep as their finger can go. And then 15% say it's deeper than their finger can go, so they can't feel it with their finger. Do some experimentation with your body, map it out, find out if you can feel it, if it's enjoyable or not for you, and see what works. If your G region is really deep in there, which for a lot of people it is, then some people report that sitting up against a wall or lying down with your knees up against your chest and your hips kind of propped up on pillows can give you better access to get a little bit deeper in there and see if you can get into it. The G region, a lot of people report, takes some time to really get going. And again, you have to already really be quite aroused in order to even find it in some cases. But it can handle kind of a lot more pressure than most people think it can handle, and it wants a lot more pressure than most people think it wants. So experiment with your body, experiment with different pressures, see what works for you. This is my favorite part of this because a lot of people don't know this, and a lot of people feel like their body isn't working right if this happens to them. But for some, the G-spot can be, or the G area can be numb or painful to touch, and people don't want it touched. So a lot of people can experience micro tears in this tissue anytime they're penetrated before they're ready. So that can be anytime there's assault or anytime they're just penetrated before they were completely aroused or whatever. That can be a wide range of things, but at any time this can succumb to micro tears, which makes it kind of painful or numb for a lot of people. However, there is hope. 45% of vagina owners thought the G region stimulation was unpleasant at first, but then discovered ways that it felt pleasurable. So, if you find that your G region is uncomfortable for you and you want to learn how to stimulate that, do some experiments, try different pressures, try different areas, try getting other stuff involved, see if you can develop a relationship with that area. If not, and it's just not for you, it's okay. You are normal, I promise. All right. I know you want techniques. Okay, so sandwiching is a great technique for people who have their G region on the upper area of their vaginal canal. Not everyone does. Do some experiments with yourself. Anyway, so with one set of fingers inside, kind of pushing upwards on that vaginal canal, take another set of fingers or your hand and kind of gently push down on the pubic bone above that area and kind of sandwich it in there, and then do whatever strokes or circles or whatever, anything that you want. Try angling it up. So whatever you are using to penetrate yourself or a partner, try angling that upwards. Sometimes there are a lot of ways that you can make something go straight up into that area, but that's another good way to really get to the heart of that G area for a lot of people. pulling. So this is where we kind of talked about the come hither motion that I referred to earlier. So using your fingers can kind of actually hook that and be used to kind of pull that and stroke that along. This is a really good way to kind of increase that pressure without feeling like you're being poked and prodded at. And if you do it right, and if you do it like with a really strong, grip, then the hips and the whole body can kind of move with it, and it's real fun. Walking. So think of if you were like pretending your little fingers were walking on a piece of paper, but you're going to do that up in that area where that G region is. So you're going to just alternate your fingers moving back and forth against each other and kind of pretend like you're walking over that area with your fingers. Another fun little fact about the G area is that this is an area, because you are stimulating that urethral sponge, that sponge actually kind of fills up with fluid, and this can cause people to ejaculate or squirt, depending on whatever you want to call that. So this is that way to get to do that if your body is capable of doing that, and not everybody's is. Some people take that fluid and absorb it back into their body, into their bladder, and that's what makes you have to pee afterwards. Okay, so we talked about the commonly known G area and why I kind of have a love-hate relationship with it, but we haven't talked about any of the other areas, and there are so many areas inside. So I have this cute little picture here with me. If you are not watching the videos, then I promise that you will not miss any content here. But here's what we were just referring to, that kind of urethral sponge, and you can see fingers kind of hooking that. And then we have the cute little squirting symbols over here, and I really love that. Anyway, there's another spot called the A spot that is just beyond this G spot and right before the cervix. So it's this area kind of tucked in there just beyond that G spot. You do have to be really careful with this one, because while some people really like gentle touching or massaging of their cervix, a lot of people find it really painful. So when you are trying to stimulate this A spot, just be careful of not accidentally touching or overstimulating that cervix as much as you can. But this is another great area that I think is kind of people don't really know about and can feel really, really good when stimulated. Another area just beyond that is the P spot. P stands for perineal. This is just beyond the cervix there. So you have one on each side of the cervix. Again, be careful with how you are stimulating that cervix there. But on the other side of the cervix, you can actually stimulate the perineal sponge. And you can actually do this from the rectum as well, which we'll talk about a little bit in the anal video that I'm going to be doing next. But this is also another really good area that is highly sensitive, and you can stimulate to do real good things. There is even one more spot that you can stimulate within the vaginal canal, and this one is my favorite spot. So this spot is called the D spot, as in, I don't think I know where it is spot. Yay! So I love this idea because it just celebrates that everybody is different, and one thing that works for somebody isn't going to work for somebody else, and there isn't really a magic button, as a lot of people tend to think, for orgasm. And so you really do have to kind of get in touch with your own body and do some experiments and experiment with pressure and all these different techniques that we're going to talk about in this video to find the area and the spot that you really enjoy, your personal D spot. Which brings me to my next technique. So we're really going to talk about widening the pressure here. And instead of just hitting these cute little 1 or 2 spots that we think are going to bring us to orgasm, let's play with the entire canvas that we have at our disposal. And what a beautiful canvas it is to start out with. So 80% of vagina owners find that broad pressure is pleasurable, and really getting into kind of the whole thing and seeing all encompassing where these pressures of the entire vaginal canal feel really nice to you. It also brings orgasm to 51% of vagina owners, either alone or with a partner, using this technique. get those muscles involved. So lots of us have heard and have experimented with the Kegel muscle, but that's not the only one that's down there. Come on, people. Really do some experimenting with the different types of muscles that you can flex and unflex and see what happens as you're doing any of these different techniques. On that same note, doing a really minor adjustment of the angle that your hips or your pelvis are on can mean the difference between, oh my God, that's amazing, and this just isn't doing anything for me. So really play with those little, what seems like maybe subtle angle changes that can really be used in any position that you're in. Let's talk combo moves for a second. So since a lot of vagina owners have reported that they need clitoral stimulation to reach climax, get your clitoris involved when you are penetrating yourself or penetrating a partner. Get that clitoris involved or whatever. You do you, but combo it up. Make a combination. Go wild. Have one hand on the outside and one hand on the inside. Do the patting your tummy and rubbing your head technique. Do different circles that are either going with each other or against each other. Go wild. Have fun with it. But really pay attention to all of the other erogenous zones as well and combo that shit. Okay. This was a big one. Thank you for bearing with me for all of this, and I hope you learned something if you did stick with me for this entire video. I really think that some of this information is super useful and not really widely known. So, thank you. As always, you can find me at AmourologyEd.net. You can find me at AmourologyEd on any social media. You can join my Facebook group and have more discussions like this if you would like. The other day I had my first panel discussion, which went swimmingly well. I thought it was great. Our panelists did awesome. So I'm going to have more future events that are going to be online. If you're interested in that, you can join my Facebook group or page. You can subscribe to my mailing list on my website, whatever you want to do. But keep up on that because I'm telling you, you won't want to miss some of this stuff. I have some good stuff coming up. And given that, I also do have an exclusive to my Facebook group kind of event coming up, or a series of events that I'm going to be reading children's books. Well, I'm not going to be reading. I have a very, very talented friend of mine who does this sort of thing that is going to be reading children's books centered around these topics. And I'm very excited to have her. And I really think that adults can learn a lot from these kind of simplified, innocent ways of putting our sexuality that I think is just beautiful. You can also join my Patreon at AmourologyEd if you would like to say thank you. Every little bit, really just if you or someone has ever gotten anything out of this that you think is useful, maybe consider saying thank you. I have Patreon as low as $1 a month, and there are perks that come with all levels. So really, it's much appreciated. Like and subscribe, tell a friend. That goes a long, long way in reaching people. And other than that, I think that's it. So thank you so much for joining me for this. We'll talk anal next week.